Just last week, I had one of the biggest revelations as a coach. And so many times when I hear coaches talk about wanting to improve as coaches, it's always limited to the physical, the technical, the tactical, the things that you can see and are tangible. And yes, there is some education about the psychological, but there's very little emphasis placed on the psychological. And when I say psychological, I'm not even just talking about how are the players doing. I'm talking about as a coach, as much time as you put in to organizing your session and planning your session is as intentional as you should be in your communication with players, in your observation of players, in your observation of what you communicate and how that can affect your players. As much time. And when I recently read a book about Alex Ferguson, and you look at the 26 years he coached Manchester United, I believe he won 13 titles. So over that almost 30-year period, he stayed relevant and was able to win half of all the years that he coached. That is madness. That is insane. Going over multiple generations of players, different types of players, different types of beliefs, but to he was able to not conform to the players, but to adjust to the times, and was able to get players to believe in him, even though things were changing around him. And he was able to get the best out of players. And part of being a good coach, I've seen so many coaches where they're good on paper, but then their team turned on them or they're not able to get the best out of their team. And it's not just getting out of the best of your team for a little while, for a year, 2 years. It's getting the best out of your team over a long period of time. And that's what I strive for as a coach, is to get the best to the point where your team fights hard for the pride of being on the team and what it represents. And you don't have to constantly remind and tell players, hey, we got to work hard. Remember, we got to work hard. Remember, we got to work hard. To where players are holding each other accountable and they have a purpose for what they're doing. It goes beyond the game. It means something bigger to them than just a game. And learning about this from this book is what inspired me to emphasize the this part of the game outside of the technical, tactical, and the physical. And it's the unseen game. And one of the things that I learned from this is the importance of maintaining your values and ideals and your beliefs every single day. That's number one. Setting up the environment and it's being rigorous about the values. So me as a coach, I have values that I write down, and me and my players go over it before training, but it shouldn't end there. It should be during training. What I can do is when I see someone uphold the value, then I mention that. When I see someone not uphold the value and do the opposite of the value, I stop it and mention that. And I'll include the players, hey, does this align with our values? Why not? What does our values say? So there's values that I have, there's values that the players have, and then they know those defined values. So instead of me just doing it before practice, even though I uphold the values during practice, but I don't name the values. And I don't know if it's necessarily naming the values, but it's the players understanding as a whole what is wrong with this and what is good about this. What do we stand for this? Do we not stand for this? So it's not just saying, hey, that's not good, we don't do that here, but actually letting the players know, instead of, oh, we don't do that, we don't do that, knowing why they don't do that, or uh why they should do something. And another thing that is so important, and I think this is where I hear of a lot of coaches failing, and you have to be so careful with it. With me, I'm ruthless about it. This is something I do good on. But in this environment, upholding the environment, what we tolerate, whether we say anything about it or not, what we tolerate, players learn, is the culture. I'll just give an example, uh, which came up in my team, and I nipped it in the bud immediately as soon as I heard it. Is a player can be on the lower end, and then players get in the habit of getting on that player for mistakes. And I heard from other players or a parent that this player was being called names by specifically two people. The next the next time I saw them, which was at a game, I nipped it in the bud, and it just so happened those two players had a poor game. And I let them have it, and I let them know uh, that we don't tolerate that here. And I do that regularly for the teams I coach. But what I can do a better job on is being more explicit about the values we follow. And then another thing that I am learning as of recent is knowing, and this is regarding communication, and it involves emotional control. This part I'm learning recently, but this book just reinforced what I was learning. And it is knowing when to communicate certain things and how to communicate certain things, specifically how. So many times as coaches, we can get in the habit where, whether it's a period of time in a game or training, where we're just on kids and we're on kids and we're on kids in a negative way, just reminding them of the things that they don't do. And some coaches do this for a long period of time, but we have to understand a couple of things within that communication and emotional control. One part of it is knowing which players we can talk to and how we talk to these players privately or in public. So there's some things that they're best corrected in private, and then there are some things that are best spoken about in public if it concerns the whole team. Anything that concerns the whole team and threatens something within the whole team may need to be addressed publicly so people know. I mean, that's kind of a hard balance because players and teams are different. So I'm not going to say, and I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to say what you should do privately or publicly, but you have to use judgment in terms of, can I address this to the player privately or publicly? How will he respond if I address it privately or publicly? Is it necessary to address it publicly, or can I address it privately? I would assume anything you can address privately, address it privately. But there are some things you need to do publicly. And then the next thing, which I'm learning, is after a bad game or a game that you don't like, don't give your full judgment right away. And in some cases, I don't even say anything. I just say, all right, guys, you guys can go home, because I know if I say anything, it's just going to be bashing players. So I don't say anything. I cool down. Maybe I'll watch the game later. Maybe I'll think about the training later. But that allows me to get my emotions out of what I'm telling players and get some better perspective so that I can provide them with more facts instead of emotions. So that is a huge one. Sometimes if you're really angry, and there's probably a place for it too, But sometimes things are so bad within a team, like just bashing on them again, it's just pointless. You're beating a dead horse. It doesn't add anything to it. And sometimes players uh just need hugs, so to speak. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical hug, but some type of gesture or expression that says, hey, I see you. Hey, I care about you. Hey, you're on the right track. Hey, I understand this is a hard time for you. Sometimes players just need things like that. And then I'm just going to go through one more thing. There's so many things, but I'm just going to go through one more. And that is helping or getting players to understand that the team and the environment that they're in is their safe place. It is a place where they can feel safe, where they will not be attacked from external sources or from internal sources. And that's where you got to make sure that no player is singled out by their teammates. You got to nip that in the bud. You have to bring a common goal to them. You can even, this is what I'm doing. I'm finding an enemy for them to unite against. So whenever there's arguments among each other, I say, hey guys, who are we fighting against? What's the enemy we are against? Okay, we're all fighting this enemy together. Let's remind ourselves of what our goal is, of who we're trying to fight against. And the enemy doesn't necessarily have to be a team, it can be an idea. If your team is on the lower end, it can be, hey, people think that talent is fixed and that you can never be talented. Let's prove people this is wrong. So the enemy is a phrase. The enemy can be so many things, but this is what I am going to start doing so that whenever teammates are against each other, guys, what do we want the same thing as a team? Do we want success? Do other teams want us to succeed? No, but we want the same goal. What are we uniting against? Who are we trying to defeat? We're all trying to defeat the same person. So let that be a reminder. And then that way players will start understanding, hey, we have a common goal. Let's huddle in together, so to speak. And regardless of our small differences or arguments here and there, there's something bigger that we're trying to go against. And I think this is also important as a coach to where you make sure that any external any external dangers that they believe are coming in, you block those out. You block those out however way, but they should not feel that within your environment. Those are just a few things that I'm implementing now. And I just pointed out because I think it is so important. Again, if you want to get the best out of your team, yeah, you can do it on a physical level, but we can't forget in sports that there's a psychological aspect to performance. There's a psychological aspect to elite performance. There's a reason that the best players in history, or to do what they do and to do it consistently, there's a psychological component. It is not just the formula of however talented you are determines how successful you will be and for how long you will be successful, which is why players who are less talented or players who are the same talent, you can have one player who's less talented or just as talented do so much better than the player who's more talented or just as talented as them, because it's a psychological aspect. And for teams, if you have any experience watching soccer and following soccer, you know the importance of the psychological aspect of the game, and you need that. So for my improvement as a coach, knowing how important it is or learning how important it is, I am going to remember to review this for myself going into every practice, every game, and just outside of that, just continually digging into the psychological aspect of coaching so that I can bring the best out of my team.